I'll reach out to my contact.
Yeah, just trying to stay on top of that.
One thing that's like playing at Al, like we drove.
Stay on top of the end of the stuff. That was my.
Yeah, yeah, that's for the 5 acres. This is all like it's for a piece way.
I mean, we're gonna slow it down. We're not gonna slow it, that's for sure.
No, we're halfway through that project that we're now. So we'll run out of money.
Okay, thank you. It's open.
We all. After we adjourn.
Yeah, our actual IT guys in Paris right now.
I'm like, guys, you please.
All right, we are ready. Yeah.
So. we have to-
Yeah.
Go through the process of saving water.
We're good. Hey, we're gonna get going. Thank you, everybody. Taking time out of your summer. Wednesday, August 7th, 2024 meeting of the Capital Region Transportation Council. We'll start with welcome and introductions. Steve Sweeney, Schenectady County.
Greg Richard, Region 1 DOT.
Beige Berryman, Saratoga Springs.
Mike Butler, City of Mechanicsville.
John Scavo, Town of Clifton Park.
Kim Lambert, Saratoga County.
Tom Houlihan, City of Rensselaer.
Harry Ward, Transportation Council.
Peter Comenzo, Town of Rotterdam. Bob Rice, Creighton Man. Ginger, Capital Streets.
Randy Milano, DOT Region 1.
Megan Daly, Port of Albany.
John Steinwood, Port of Albany.
Lauren Raquel, Capital District Regional Planning Commission. Rita Chinea, Capital Region Transportation Council.
Mike Williams, CDTA. Jim DeJoy, Public. Jacob Beeman, Transportation Council.
Andrew Tracy, Transportation Council. Chris Bauer, Transportation Council.
Howard Gobel, City of Albany.
Andrew Prushick, City of Detroit. Connor Hoskin, Albany County Airport Authority.
Marcus Stiglione, Regional Planning Commission.
Sharon Butler, City of Cohoes.
And Sandy Niswitz, Capital Region Transportation Council. I'll read the folks online. We have Adrian Cattell, Alexandria Carter from Schenectady, Chris Kate from McFarland Johnson, Emily Laughlin. Please put your affiliations in the chat because some of these names are not as familiar to me as others. Jamie O'Neill from Town of Malta, Joe Semino from CHA, Josh Giller from East Greenbush, Caitlin Rapier from Town of Colony, Laura Robertson, Town of Niskuna, someone named Liz, if you could put your affiliation in the chat. Mary Moore Wallinger from Land Art Studio, who's our presenter today, Nicole McGrath from Federal Highway Administration. There's a I could have just jumped. Ryan Riper from Town of Malta, and I believe that is it online.
Ryan is actually Town of Wilton.
Did I say, what did I say?
Malta.
Oh, sorry, Wilton. And Joseph Peregrine from Town of Colony.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Now, official statement from the council. You're gonna make a statement based on last meeting.
Yes, so last meeting, we had some inappropriate conversation here at the council. That because these meetings are live streamed and recorded, was shared amongst a lot of folks out in our community. And we received a number of complaints about the tone and content of some of the conversation we had. We had an emergency meeting of our administrative and finance committee last week. The video has been shared with elected officials that you folks represent, leaving it up to them how they will address some of the concerns of some of the members. This has resulted in one change already. We're having new representation from the Port of Albany moving forward, which is going to necessitate a vice chair today. We'll get to that on the latter part of the agenda. I did want to read the official statement that was shared publicly. For the record, at the July 10th 2024 Planning Committee meeting of the Capital Region Transportation Council. Comments were made by some members that were dismissive of our valued community partners and the public and wholly unprofessional. While no policy or funding decisions were made at the meeting connected to these remarks, the Transportation Council's Executive Committee decided that action needed to be taken and a statement issued. As a result, the Albany Port District Commission has chosen to select a new representative to serve on the Transportation Council, and the port's chief executive officer expressed that the comments made by their former appointee did not reflect the port's views. The comments made at the July Planning Committee meeting do not reflect the views of the council's policy board nor its staff. In addition, the Transportation Council staff will work with the Planning Committee chair to ensure discussion items remain on topic. The Transportation Council has a 60-year history of providing an environment that supports a comprehensive, collaborative, and cooperative transportation planning process based on mutual trust and respect. We deeply regret that trust was broken, and we will work with our member agencies to ensure discussion of transportation topics remains constructive and contributes to the important work of the Transportation Council. So I'll just remind you guys, you are here at the pleasure of your counterpart, either your elected official, your CEO. These meetings are live streamed and recorded. So we do need you to speak to the issues and bring forth issues of concern. It's okay to say you have a concern about safety. It's okay to question a survey, but how you say it does make a difference. So I just ask that, in the future that, these comments and suggestions be brought forward in a professional, constructive way, even though some would say that some of the commentary at the last meeting was in the context of a joke. It's just not appropriate. So any questions about that? Okay, sorry to start the meeting on that note, but it needed to be said.
Visitor issues, did anybody sign up to speak?
No one has registered to speak.
Presentation, Mary Moore, are you gonna introduce that?
Yes, now on a lighter note, so our presentation today is for the City of Schenectady's Albany and Crane Streets Complete Street Study, which was recently completed. Jen Saponis was sort of the lead staff person on this before she left us, but we've invited Mary Moore, who is participating virtually today, to give a presentation on the findings of the study. So Mary Moore, you should be able to share your screen. Let me know if you can't, and we'll get you going.
Great. Can everyone see that? Can you see that?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Always enjoy my projects with the Transportation Council. And this was no exception. So just to jump into it, the design team, it was led by Fuss and O'Neill, which had started as Place Alliance in Schenectady when we started the project, and they're now part of Fuss and O'Neill. They were the lead design firm, which provided a lot of support looking at the measurements, putting the drawings together, helping with a lot of the design. I was served on the team as the project manager and worked closely with them and all the different components of the project. Johan Matthews was a key part of the project with Mutual Design. He helped spearhead our community outreach and engagement process, which included youth-led research, which we've had a lot of youth-based research, which we've had a lot of success with in Schenectady. And then Creighton Manning Engineering provided support through their transportation planning. And so we worked closely with the City of Schenectady and the Capital Region Transportation Council, and then had a number of different engagement and outreach events to connect with residents, business owners, community leaders, and there's a lot of institutional stakeholders in the area as well. So this project was a little different because it was segments that were, which might seem separate at first, but they actually stemmed out of a project that I'll go over in a minute. But it looked at Albany Street, which is a major corridor in the city, and looking at it from where it connects to Veeder Avenue, just above downtown Schenectady, out to Brandywine Avenue, which is another big connector within the city. It parallels Route 5, but both see a larger amount of traffic. And it is, while the buses use Route 5, Albany is kind of preferred for trying to keep other things off State Street. So for instance, could it accommodate more bicycle infrastructure was one of the questions. And then Looking at the other side was Crane Street running from Broadway and then up to Norwood Avenue. So also tying into the downtown on the lower end, and then a way to get to that the Brandywine Avenue area and the 890. So it's again connecting to two fairly big connectors. And the project also included looking at Main Avenue and Chrysler. And so part of the reason for this was the Craig Main Connection Project, which was a former linkage study, which ran from Albany Street all the way to Crane Street. And currently, that project is actually the section from Albany Street up to the schools is it's been funded and it's under they're finishing the drawings now. So the hope is that construction would start next year. And we were very fortunate in that project in that Craig Street was very wide and allowed for all kinds of exciting possibilities. So that project's actually going to include a two-way separated bicycle lane. But Main Avenue, which has to carry a whole lot of different uses, including city buses, school buses, people walking, was a lot more challenging. So it needed more study. So that was part of this linkage study. And so that project was really successful. It started with a bike demonstration project as part of the city's bike infrastructure master plan, and built on that. And through pretty creative and intensive community outreach, we were able to engage hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the study. And unfortunately, after COVID, it made that those kind of crowds a little more challenging, but we've still kept a lot of connections with the local stakeholders and institutions, and have sort of been able to test out which methods work well for engaging people. So really wanted to build on that strength of connecting to all the various institutions, keeping the community connected with each other, and meeting people where they are. So one of the particular challenges of this project was that, as I mentioned, and is really common in environmental justice communities, it's a much denser neighborhood, so there's a really high demand for parking and bus lanes and school, and there's a lot less width to work with. So while there's a lot of different things you'd like to fit in those cross sections, you end up having to make choices about which ones are more important to the community. So that's where the outreach was especially important. And so there's also several exciting things happening in the study area. The library, the Mount Pleasant Library branch was completed just before the Craig Main study and continues to be a major anchor for the neighborhood. And next to that, they're currently constructing a senior housing area and making improvements to the sidewalk and the intersection. And that's also going to include some community space as well. The Schenectady Intercity Ministry on Albany Street, kind of close to the Craig Street intersection, is also doing some campus improvements and is another major anchor. But looking at both corridors, the intersections were really problematic. A lot of the high crash rates were often located and concentrated at the intersections. And there were also a number of mostly pedestrian, but also some bicycle incidents as well. And so the other thing we found throughout all of the areas was just that a lot of times the road had been paved so much that the curb barely existed anymore. And so people were parking on sidewalks, and as speeds increased, people felt more and more that they needed to get their cars out of the street and were parking more and more on the sidewalks. And it was just kind of building on that, because it wasn't being heavily enforced. And so really trying to figure out how can we do more traffic calming and definition of the, protection of the pedestrian areas to keep cars where they should be. So these are just some of the photos of some of the site conditions. A lot of sidewalks in very poor shape, and really needing to be replaced. In Schenectady, it's up to the homeowner to replace their sidewalks. So when you're in a community that's mostly lower income, replacing the sidewalk becomes very challenging. And so part of the study was really looking at the importance of that connection. I think for this area, the last time the city looked at it, only 40% of people had access to a vehicle. So there's a lot of people who really rely on those sidewalks on a regular basis. And we did look into what was taken into account as part of the bike infrastructure plan, but really taking a closer look at what is the actual width we have to work with, and can we fit those kinds of things, and how does it balance with what we're hearing. So a lot of community outreach. We set up tables on the sidewalk. We held events at key locations within the study area. We met with different stakeholder groups, business associations, neighborhood associations. And then we also, because there were so many things to consider and so many heavy uses in some of these areas, we had very specific meetings once we had the concepts developed with the police department, emergency services, traffic enforcement. We also talked to the Capital District Transportation Authority, and we talked to the school district. They're also doing some changes to one of the schools that's going to bring a lot more bus traffic to the Mean Chrysler area. So that was a big piece of wanting to make sure we were getting that right. And we set up, we tabled at different community events so we could capture more people and let more people know about the project. Got a good feedback. These are some of the young folks who helped us out on the street with quick surveys, connecting with people, getting flyers out about the events, helping us at some of the tabling. And then once we had our concepts, we shared them and let people rate which one they liked best. So we asked people about what types of improvements they felt would be the most successful. We asked them whether they drove or walked more on the corridor, or whether they rode bicycles. And then we asked them a lot about which different cross sections they would prefer for different areas. And so, for instance, Main Avenue, which is one of the tightest corridors, there was a strong preference for keeping it two-way, but also keeping things that would make it better for pedestrians. So for instance, street trees and separation from the roadway with that. And so once we had that, we put together the design recommendations. And so part of that, we talked a lot about balancing mobility needs. And so how do you, when you don't have all the space you would like, how do you decide which one needs to be pushed to the front and prioritized? And then also really stressing the importance of the 3 E's. The city engineer, Chris Wallen, talked a lot about this. And design can only fix so much. And so in this instance, it really needs a combination of the engineering, the enforcement, and also the education. So for instance, we still have a number of people who ride their bicycle on the wrong side of the road. So how do you teach people about how to, use these different situations, and how do you teach people how to use the new 2-way cycle track that's coming in, and to ride safely, that kind of thing. And then also talking a lot about street trees and the importance, especially in these dense communities where it gets so hot and there's so much pavement. How can you fit street trees in? And when you're forced to do it in like a really tiny area, can you use things like structural soil or the cells that go underneath to kind of maximize that tree's chance of getting bigger and being more effective? And also the importance of including bus shelters, especially when you have a lot of people relying on public transportation who are, walking to get there, and can they wait somewhere where it's cooler and protected from the weather? And also the importance of public art. And that's one of the easiest ways to visually engage people in the community, to look for opportunities where you can pay for artwork to be part of the change you're making, so that you can pay people in the community, have that sense of ownership and the sense of pride, and to do events that really pull the community into the project, so that it speaks to people on more than just the infrastructure level. And so we looked at different types of intersection improvements. A lot of times where it wasn't wide enough to include a bike lane, one of the things we talked about was whether you do the bump outs, like not all the way to the white line. So if you are on a bicycle, there's a little bit of room that's kind of stays to the side of the road. And we talked about just kind of hierarchies of intersections. I think one of the big things, we really felt like the bump outs would make a big difference, because the corridors are so long and so straight, and people routinely park right up to the intersection. So it's very poor visibility, and cars will, I think, pass, you know, there's story after story of cars just going straight through intersections, not stopping. And so anything you can do to sort of really visibly show that it is an intersection and you know, with bump outs and limiting the parking all the way up so that people get a sense that there is a cross coming up and they need to slow down and look and follow the traffic devices or stops. So and then also just looking at the intersection improvements that came out of the Craig Main study for the intersection with Crane Street, Main, and Chrysler, and really prioritizing pedestrian traffic there. And looking at ways that you can do that, you know, even temporarily as a way to test things out, or while you're still trying to get the money to do larger intersections. A lot of people asked about speed tables, and we talked a little bit about that. And the feeling was that perhaps on some of the smaller side streets, it would make sense, but they really don't make sense in a corridor. And you want to make sure that you're not just pushing all the traffic off of one side street onto another street where it would be problematic. So the recommendation was to look at if there were places where this might make sense that are tying into this, where there's big intersection issues, but not necessarily to do it on the corridor itself. And so looking at the actual recommendations, because we started with Albany Street between Veeder Avenue and the Craig Street, and because there's bike lanes on Knott Terrace, which is also part of Veeder Avenue, and also because there's going to be the two-way cycle track on Craig Street, we really wanted to figure out, is there a way to create a better bicycle connection between these two? And it wasn't wide enough to do bike lanes on both sides, but we were able to at least get a climbing lane so that if you're going uphill, you would have a 5-foot bike lane to give you a little more space to do that. And the thought was that if you're going downhill, you've got the hill kind of working in your favor. So that would be the lane where it would be shared. And then moving up the hill, the one area we ran into there was where Newest Lunches, which is one of the oldest restaurants in the city. They really rely heavily on the parking on both sides. And so we proposed working with the neighboring property to pull the sidewalk back just enough so you could still keep that climbing lane in there and include keep the parking on both sides. Then once you got past the Craig Street, it begins to get a lot narrower, and on all of the roadways we looked at, maybe except for Main and Chrysler, that were just consistently narrower than what they have to serve. The road widths really varied greatly from block to block. So there were instances where, well, you could have fit a bike lane for half the block, you couldn't fit it for the other block, or it would be back and forth, and it wasn't really enough length to allow to make sense to do a full bike lane. So for the rest of the street, we really focused on trying to narrow the lanes to 11 feet. So it would still accommodate buses, but help with minimizing it and sort of maximizing the usable space on the back of the curb. And so we added trees and striped, and we recommended striping just to, again, sort of help people feel more comfortable parking where they're supposed to be, and to also help those lanes feel a little bit narrower. And so then, again, lots of areas where there's just no trees at all. We showed the poles. Ideally, the poles would get moved, but we just wanted to leave them in the renderings like where they were, so people could recognize like how they would affect the curb. There's some instances where you can stop the curb on either side, but it gets a little tight, or whether you do a bump out, but really feeling like if you want to fix the problem, because there were some places where the road is actually too narrow for what it's having to accommodate, which is, again, really pushing people who are trying to park their cars on the side of the street to not feel comfortable doing that. So we really wanted to try and figure out how to get that width right, so those things can happen without the sidewalk being the thing that loses out. And then in these areas where it is a lot of two-family housing, and sometimes there's driveways, sometimes there's not even a driveway, we felt like it was important to keep the parking on both sides. And so then looking at Crane Street, which was also quite narrow and very, very steep. The the priority, and again, you've got several two-family houses, a lot without driveways or very, very minimal driveways. And so, and this parking tended to be more used than some of the others. We proposed narrowing the road a little bit to get a tree line in there to help with kind of traffic calming and to make the walking conditions better. And then moving up the hill, and again, striping just to make those lanes feel narrower and make cars feel more comfortable parking on the sides, using just the open tree areas in the more commercial areas where you've also got a lot of pedestrian traffic and other things that are happening there. But again, it unfortunately, just with the businesses there and the sidewalk already feels really tight, there wasn't really room to fit the bicycle lane. So we try to focus on how do you improve the pedestrian condition and calm traffic where possible. And again, just really draw attention to where those intersections are coming in, because this was another area where people just were flying in from the side streets, and people on this street weren't really slowing down before the intersection. So that was leading to a lot of problems. And then where it gets even, then moving to where you have the intersection coming in, really picking up a much wider tree line so you can prevent people from, currently people just park in the middle of the intersection, which makes it even more confusing because you've got roads coming in from odd angles. And it's one of those intersections where every time I drive through it, I ask myself again if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's really not very clear. And taking back some of the land by the gas station where it's just kind of all pavement through this area and people are parking too close to the intersection and shortcutting through the gas station. So really trying to take some of that back. And then moving on, this area, there were some areas where there were utilities on both sides, and we recommended trying to get them all switched to the poles on the one side, so you could at least have tall street trees on one side and then have shorter trees on the other side. And this was an area where there were a couple businesses, but it was mostly residential. So focusing on calming traffic, getting better walking conditions, adding shelters into some of the areas. And then looking at Chrysler Avenue, this one was heavily informed by those stakeholder meetings with emergency services and police. It was determined that having it move from Crane Street to Norwood made the most sense because there were sort of easy movements where you could go in the other direction right there, and it would minimize the impact to the surrounding, like, very narrow side streets, but make it a much safer situation. So for instance, right now it's two-way traffic with parking, but it's only 24 feet wide. So that means you've got two 8-foot travel lanes and an 8-foot parking lane. And so constantly people are parking on the sidewalk. And if there's snow anywhere, you have to pull over and just wait for anybody to go by and hope that it works. So making that one way, we talked about the option of potentially striping it as a trial period or to get people used to it. But ideally, you would keep the parking on the side that it is, because it has the fewest cross streets and allows for the most parking on that side, and then add some green infrastructure on the right side to again provide shade. And then because of that, when we looked at Main, it really didn't make sense to go to a one-way option on Main, because it would just send a lot of people to side streets that have worse problems than Main, and send people a little too much out of the way. And also because it has to serve so many bus routes for both CDTA and also the school system. Consistently, everyone we talked to, residents, stakeholders, everybody felt like two-way, it really needed to stay two-way. And so the two main options that it got narrowed down to were, one was to do, and it's narrower, closer to Crane Street than it is at Forest. And so you have kind of two cross sections you have to look at as part of the design. So this one on the left is where it's the narrowest, and then it gets a little bit wider. So on one option looked at just two 11-foot lanes, and this actually had 4-foot sidewalks with like little 3-foot cutouts, and that was kind of the only way you could actually get trees in there. But we felt like in an area where it's so hot and so dense, and there's just not a lot of tree cover, and it was really important. And there's a lot of people walking to the schools, and it's very warm. So trying to get those trees in there to make it more comfortable. And that was something that there was a lot of strong support from the community engagement for. And then when you move to where it's a little wider, you would keep one lane of parking, because we also just heard, I mean, there's a lot of very close housing in the side street. Parking is definitely at a shortage in this area. So I think we lose 18 spots with this, but we were hesitant to lose more than that. So this one allows for one lane to stay, and you end up still having the 4-foot sidewalks, which would be wider between the trees. And then you would have the 3-foot tree line. And so that's again where having that extra tree infrastructure to kind of connect those trees to grass on the back of the sidewalk, and give them a better chance would be really beneficial. And then the other option we looked at was if you wanted to continue the bicycle connection that's coming up from the Craig Street, what would that look like? And so we considered an option kind of similar to what they ended up doing on a section of Brandywine, where you would have a multi-use path, but you'd have to move some utility poles. And at this point, counting the curb, it would be 9 feet. So you could potentially get like an 8-foot lane. But again, that's pretty tight. And what it means is, for the first half of the block, you can't have any trees, and you've just got the sidewalk right up against the lane. And then for where it gets a little wider, you get a 2.5-foot lawn that you can put a tree in and kind of hope for the best. And it's not impossible, but it's definitely not ideal. But it ends up being like pretty open without any kind of green infrastructure. And so and both of these, because it is so tight, and we were basing this on information we had at the linkage study level, we decided to ultimately recommend that once it goes into design, the final determination be made at that point for whether it should include the bike lane or whether it should include the trees, just because it's literally going to come down to whether you have this 6 inches available or not. And there's a few property owners that have encroached on the right of way that need to be managed as part of that as well. So this one was left kind of up in the air, but with a bias towards the street trees, just because again, talking to the schools and the neighbors, like so many people walk this area, and they just felt like having it be a more comfortable walking area was kind of the most important thing to them, after just getting it wide enough that you could safely accommodate the traffic that's happening on there now. So that's the summary of what the project includes. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Mary Moore?
I would just like to offer, this particular study was interesting because it shows you, and a lot of folks with very urban, dense environments can relate to this, when you have very narrow cross sections and you have to trade off different street treatments. And you can see the thought that went into each street, and conversations with, different users of those streets, and how compromises had to be made in terms of creating these environments. It's never a one size fits all. And I think it's an important lesson. And also I think it's a good reference for those of you that have these kinds of streets in your communities, particularly in areas where this land use and transportation connection is happening. And what I mean by the land use side, we have a lot of these older urban neighborhoods that were originally single family homes. They are now multi-unit apartments, many of whom don't have driveways for cars. And that really constrains what you can do in these areas. So food for thought, but I think there's just a lot of interesting ideas that would be a good reference for communities like that. And I encourage you to take a look at the report.
And there is a website that's on the front here. I'll pull it up again. And I can see if I'll copy this and paste it in the chat. But there's a lot of additional photos and other presentations from the project. So if you want to check out more stuff on it, the the website's a great place. And there's also a lot of information about the Craig Main connection, and some of the community art projects that have come out of those projects are posted on there as well.
Thanks, Mary Moore.
Thanks.
So,
Interesting project, and I know a lot of it is already into implementation. I mean, Chris isn't here, he can
The-
speak to it, but I
Craig
know
Main,
a
the
lot of
Craig-
it, they are actually under construction.
Yeah.
design, so.
The Craig Main, they're definitely well underway, and this one will kind of be that next level.
All right, moving along to administration, previous meeting minutes, July 10th, I need a motion to approve that, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I get a second? Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Motion carries. TIF fiscal constraint, our favorite, Jacob?
So we are currently within our 5% over programming, and under programmed, overall for our federal highway fund sources. So we're in good shape for now. If we look individually by fund source, we are a little bit over programmed for NHPP, over programmed for, large urban, but then our under programming is in, PBG Flex and carbon reduction programs, so that's how we get our balance, so we're in good shape for now.
Good shape. Thank you, Jacob. Vice chair appointment, are you ready to, you just wanna have a discussion about it?
So we do need nominees, or a nominee, from the floor. And basically, at this point, you know, we're at the end, almost, we have 2 more planning committee meetings, so we're really just seeking someone to fill that role for the remainder of this fiscal year, and we're really looking for volunteers, and I was hoping to be able to appoint somebody today, or we can appoint them at the next meeting in October. Is anybody willing to volunteer to serve that role? Basically, to back this one up if he's not here. Don't all jump at once.
Was it something
I'll
that
buy you lunch.
you want to have, let people think about it and
We
maybe at the
can do
next
that
meeting,
too. If I don't hear from anybody, I will be reaching out to you folks in the next couple of weeks.
you know, something that people wanna think about.
Yeah.
Because you will inherit the chair job probably. More years. More years. At best, so. Will people think about it?
We'll let you think about it.
Okay, all right.
I'll be reaching out.
All right, thank you. Action items. Tip amendments, we're taking what? We have a bunch here. We're just adding the CMAC tap, is that?
Oh, there's more than that.
All right,
Um,
approving
We'll
amendments.
start with the.
Livingston Avenue Bridge.
Just hold on a second. This is set up, and-
Busy here, Greg, huh?
We have been busy, yes. So Livingston Avenue, as the letter comes up, I'll just preface this with. It's what they call August redistribution time of the federal fiscal year, when. Federal highway approaches states that are good at obligating their money. With money that is available from states that are not as good at obligating their money. So it's kind of a. Additional funds to New York State, and it happens every year. New York does very well in every round of this because we're good at obligating our funds. I'll also say usually this is handled through accounting. Without getting into federal aid 101. It's usually just handled on existing projects that have a federal authorization, and we can just convert. It's a long story. This year, we're presented with. $90 million of a fund source that's usually very scarce, which is the off-system bridge. Because of the magnitude that's available, we had to find one project that was A, eligible, and B, could obligate all of it at once, because it's a lot easier to obligate one instead of like 100 small projects. So this tip action is to convert $90 million of the state funds on Livingston Avenue Bridge to off-system bridge. And in the just nick of time, through a hopeful policy committee approval next month, we can obligate a full 90 million of federal funds here to offset the state investment that we currently have. And it solves that problem of obligating more federal money here in New York State. So That's,
So it's just new money that's coming in from a source that we don't usually have, and then it gives you 90 million more to play with.
put back into the state coffer that we invested otherwise here. We originally hoped this project would have a lot more federal funds from
Beginning.
someone in the DOT, and at the end of the day, we ended up
The state ended up spending a lot of the state's.
state money, so this is an opportunity to put some of that state money back in the coffer while also obligating this redistribution exercise, which is long and short, kind of found money. So usually it's done on existing projects. This one's unique. So we're bringing it here to move forward.
So is this construction schedule 23-24? Is that?
It's already in construction. And we will obligate this in 4 weeks and a day. Assuming.
Assuming no disasters at the policy board meeting.
Why not, right?
Hi, folks. This is Nicole McGrath from FHWA. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm not there in person. I just wanted to add to, I've been talking to Julia about these funds being added to this project, and I just want to make it clear that the funds are only going to the multi-use path part of the project. Since they're federal highway funds, they're only going for that one part of the project.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. That's, the path is eligible for this amount of money. And that's basically the maximum amount of federal highway we can put on the railroad bridge.
Okay.
Since it's a rail
Since it's a
slash.
rail. So it's 90 million for the path?
Yeah, there's a long series of calculations going on, but this is a very expensive bridge to build. And by adding the path, it's
Adds.
90 of the 634.
Wow, okay. Alright. Any
I mean, keep in
questions?
mind, it's contributing to the structure.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not just the path.
Foundation's gotta be bigger, the
Yeah, yeah.
steel's gotta be bigger.
Right.
Everything's, and it all rolls up to, that's the.
Okay. Alright, any more questions for Greg? So we're taking this, now we need a motion to, I guess, switch fund source, I guess, if that's what we want to call it.
I'll make it.
Alright, do we have a second? Any further discussion? In favor, aye? Anyone opposed, staying? Motion carries. Alright. Amendments 2 through 8, now this is just adding the counts.
Correct.
So we're taking them all as one?
One big group, on your screen, and those listening virtually, you can see the list of projects that were awarded funding. We have a total of 8.
So to assist all of our local sponsors with tip letters, when the TAP, CMAQ, and now the carbon reduction program announcements were made, we've gotten into the practice of doing one tip letter to get them all live on the tip at once. So avoid having 8 different letters come in, just trying to be efficient with everyone's time, so. Post this on behalf of the sponsors, the letters are all the phases of the costs and the applications. We know these evolve and change a little bit over time, but this gets them all active on the tip, so we can all get rolling on our awards. I can run through them, and we're all, aware of the press release.
They're shown on the screen, I was ready to read through all of them.
Any questions? Then we're just looking for a motion to add these to the tip based on the.
Will require policy board action as well.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mark. Can I get a second?
Connor?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? All right, everybody, get your CMAQ projects rolling. An additional amendment, right? Amendment 9, we're talking Norman Skill Bridge again.
Yeah, well, at the last planning committee, we thought we had the final estimate for this project, but it continues to inflate new final design features. We're basically at an engineer's estimate now, so this is the final answer.
Preliminary final.
We're anticipating construction to go, at last meeting, we were at about 7.4 million. we're going about 9.6 is the final estimate. By designers and Sherman. And so this amendment is to revise last month's letter to carry this forward to policy for the final approval. And again, this is gonna be obligated in the first couple weeks of September, so it'll still happen. I believe it'll happen this year. It shows 24-25. We'll verify the year. But it's up to the amounts. It is basically ready for construction.
It's an HPP, which we're already over programmed that, is that?
This is the statewide NHPP.
Yeah, fortunately, this was funded through a statewide selection, so it's inflating a piece of the pie that doesn't affect our fiscal constraints.
What is the length of the path?
So I mean, the bridge, everything's designed for 75 years, so the path.
The
The length of
the length of
the-
the.
Oh.
South Central Park to the Winter Rec area. I don't know, what is that, a good quarter mile?
Quarter to a third of a mile. Besides what's on the bridge. And then
I don't think the paths driving, the cost increases so much, as I'm assuming,
I mean, the bridge is bigger.
Yeah.
To
a little
accommodate,
wider.
there's some grading that has to happen to make the path work along the roadside, so there's some cost of the path, but most of this is unfortunately baked in the inflation of. Current times.
Any additional questions for Greg? Then we need a motion to approve this amendment, adding NHPP for the Normanskill Bridge. Can I get a motion? Andrew, get a second. That got her, was that?
You're in town.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Greg, you're up again, right? New York 146, Clifton Country Road.
This one is fortunately cost neutral, finally. We're simply merging two projects that have long been in design. We're ready for construction, but obviously the interest of efficiency and the interest of traveling public, we want to merge the construction phases in one, since the proximity is so close along the 146 corridor. So this action is basically moving the construction phase off of 1085-52 and moving into 1085-44, so that they will be let as one in the action, so. It's a simple merge of two projects, the traveling public efficiency.
No cost issues, right?
Cost neutral.
Cost neutral. All right, can I get a motion to approve that amendment?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? Favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. All right. Moving on to National Highway Freight Program,
Yeah, we
border
were,
designations, is this
yeah, we weren't certain if DOT wanted to speak to that. If not, Chris Bauer is available to speak to that.
Sure, so, yeah, I mean, I can summarize it and then Greg, if you want to add anything to it or anybody else. But New York State DOT's main office, made this request to us. Maybe you could scroll down to the list of locations, probably the most thing people are most interested in. But they made this request as part of their state freight plan update. And they're proposing to add several new National Highway Freight Program, NHFP projects. And as part of that, they also have to designate new critical urban freight corridors. So just to give you a little bit of background, the states become eligible for NHFP funds once they have FHWA's approval of a state freight plan. Which must be completed every 4 years. And in the freight plan, there has to be a fiscally constrained freight investment plan specifying priority project locations. So, and as part of that, the FHWA also requires DOTs to designate the locations of the NHFP projects as critical urban freight corridors. DOT is limited to 150 miles of critical urban freight corridors statewide. So their strategy has been and continues to be to designate short segments. Obviously, 150 miles will be used up very quickly if we designated long corridors. So their strategy has been to designate short segments for the NHFP funded projects. And new critical urban freight corridor segments require coordination for the NPO, which is the reason why they made this request. There are 3 projects in the Transportation Council region that have been identified in the draft state freight plan, which is in its final stages. And they're anticipating approval of that in September. The 3 projects are replacing NY 146 bridge over I-890 in the city of Schenectady. They're replacing the 146 bridge over Chrysler Ave and the CSX Railroad in the town of Rotterdam. And interchange improvements at exit 16 on the Northway, which is Ballard Road, which is near where the few distribution centers are in the town of York. So the project limits, so these projects will be added for NHFP funding. And then the 3 corresponding roadway limits of those would be added to the critical urban freight corridors. One note is that one of these projects is already on the DIP, the one on Ballard Road. The other 2 would still need to come back to be added by this project sponsor, which in this case would be DOT. So I hope that made sense. It's kind of a complicated thing that's deep in regulations, but our recommendation is for the planning committee to recommend to the policy board endorsing the 3 NHFP projects and their subsequent urban freight corridor segment designations, which we would do by letter, which I think was in the draft.
So this makes them eligible for this freight funds, which covers a part of the project cost, doesn't cover the project cost.
For all of these, I believe, well, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was unmet project.
Yeah, unmet project
Above
funding.
and beyond what you've already.
So like Chrysler Ave, actually, that is basically the 80% of it, so the 20% match brings the cost to the 11.6. The other 2 projects are gonna need a mix of NHPP, the normal fund source, to round out the final funding, but in short, like Chrysler Ave is interesting because the bridge access, they go higher for the new railroad requirements of 24 feet above tracks, I believe, and for 22, it's currently 20 or 21.5. Needs to go a little higher. But all of these have had the free benefit to the region.
Questions? I just will get them on the list, right? So we need a motion to approve the 3 projects as identified.
Sharon,
We have a second.
Second.
Mark,
Thank you, Mark. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstain? Motion carries for the NHFP project listing.
I just wanted to make one clarification. I misspoke earlier, someone put it out online. When I said there were 8 TAP CMAX ERP awards, there are actually 7, so I'm sorry about that.
Check it.
They're on it.
They're on
They're
it.
on it.
They're on it. Wow. Okay. All right, tip solicitation materials, Jacob.
Yes, so we are looking for the approval of our tip guidance document, which we discussed at more length last meeting. And then opened it up for comment over the past month. And I guess to my knowledge, we haven't received any comments. But again, this document we've been working on with our tip task force. And really what it's doing is outlining our new tip update process and evaluation methodology that we're gonna be using to score projects in our upcoming tip update this fall. Really the big changes, we just kind of made some tweaks to the project categories to help kind of better align them with the types of projects that we usually see. And then the big change with the evaluation methodology is really that each one of those categories is getting its own specific evaluation methodology instead of kind of a a long list where we would evaluate each project and each project type by the same list of criteria. So we're trying to make it kind of more project specific or project type specific. So today we're just looking for action to approve that and kind of get everything ready for our upcoming tip update in the fall.
So before we act on that, I did want to give Andrew an opportunity to share a preview of the application. Which we have revised based on, your feedback. From past years as well as work that our staff has done over the last few months. To improve the process. So I'm gonna turn this chair over to Andrew. I'm just trying to get us set up for you.
Yeah, I can talk it if you want to click through each page of the
Sure,
document,
do
that's
that.
fine as well.
Yep.
So 3 years ago, last tip solicitation, we did it online for the first time. We used Jotform. We asked the tip task force how well it went and got very generally positive feedback about Jotform. Much easier than filling out, a PDF or a paper copy. So we're going to use Jotform again. There's going to be a different Jotform application for each of the project categories, same as last time. Jacob and I are going to build a landing page on our website with all the Jotform links on it, along with the tip guidance documents and all the rest of the information you'll need. One thing we will say about Jotform, the only issue that we really saw last time was people would fill out an application and then get halfway through it and start a new one, and then they lose the progress that they made on their first application. So we just like to point out, with Jotform, please make sure you submit one application before beginning the next. There is a way to save an in-progress application if you run into a roadblock. There is a way to save it as a link so you can return to it in the future. If you need help with that, please contact Jacob and I, and we can help with that. So Sandy is showing the application now. Page 1 is just the instructions. If you scroll down a bit, so you can see part A, B, C, and D. Part A is the sponsor information. Part B is questions, project-specific questions. Part C is the cost estimate, funding and schedule. And then part D is just to wrap up a couple of check boxes, and then you submit the application. So for all 6 project categories, parts A, C, and D will be exactly the same. The only part that will differ is part B. We're going to be asking different questions based on the project category. So Sandy, I think you can just hit next and go through each page. Project eligibility here, you just need to certify that you understand how federal funding works and that there's a local match requirement. And we put links to the project evaluation criteria as well, so you can review it while you're preparing your application. And I think you can just keep clicking next here. This example application that you're going to see is for roadway projects. So this is part A, the sponsor information. Part B, this is the part that will differ based on the project category. This is where we ask you questions about your project. If you hit next again, you can see these are this page is the project limits, the start and end milepost for your roadway project. On this page, we ask for the purpose and need and scope of work for the project. On this page, we ask the question, so this is an important page, all of the merit points that are assigned to this project category. This is where all the questions live. So if you want to get merit points, please fill these out. If you hit yes on any of these questions, it'll open up a text box so you can explain your answer. So if you think your question will benefit security and resiliency, you hit yes, and then it'll ask, well, please explain your project's impact on security and resiliency. Part C, this is where we ask for the cost estimate for the project and your preferred design and construction schedule. and what funding will be used for the local match requirement as well, along with any additional funding that you're using above and beyond the local match. So this part of the application is the same as 3 years ago. You might have to maybe hit those check boxes. I think there was one more checkbox at the top. Okay, good. This is the last page, so the important thing here is that there's a required document. For every application, you're required to get a signed letter of support from your elected official committing to the local match requirement and supporting the project, so that make sure you have that ready in advance, and then you can upload that on the last page along with any additional supporting documents. If you have a planning study or something along those lines, feel free to include that as well.
And we still
once
have
you-
the letter requirement for if you're not the owner, but applying.
Yeah, that's early on,
It's early.
so if you're going to improve a state highway or a county highway, but you're a local municipality, you'll need a letter of support from the roadway owner. But that was back, I think in part A. So when you hit submit, you'll get an email, and the email will include a PDF copy of the application you just submitted. So that you'll have a copy for your records. I think that's all. If anyone has any questions for Jacob Bryan?
The schedule is September and then December or not?
To be determined. So what we're trying to do is set us up so that we're prepared when we can pull the trigger on a solicitation after that policy board in September. We have not yet gotten any official guidance from NISTOT on the timing, the parameters, what the funding levels are. We have zero idea at this point, so. We just put everything together so that we can hit the ground running. We hope we can offer an opportunity in the month of September. I'm hoping it doesn't go the way it went 3 years ago. Those of you who were around know how delayed we were getting started last time. But we've done our work to get prepared, so that's where we're at.
So if someone wanted to start working on the application, even though we haven't like done a solicitation.
These are
yet,
not publicly
not
available.
yet.
That's why we're previewing them for you
Okay.
today, so we
Alright.
didn't want there to be any unfair advantage to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, DOT is still working towards instructions and targets coming out, famous last words, soon. I can't define soon yet, but, we are working for a much better schedule than the prior tip-up date, because that caused chaos at all levels, not just here. And, so we prefer not do that again. So stay tuned. I think, I'm hoping we can have a solicitation this fall. I would almost contend to solicit, even if we aren't getting instructions out, because they will come soon enough. I mean, as a preview, nothing on the local system will change. There is an encouragement to spend HSIP, the safety money, on the local system. And that is between anything identified through clear or systemic treatments. Think PSAP treatments that went around a few places from a main office initiative of really trying to push the systemic pedestrian safety treatments. If anyone has more locations that qualifies, they're highly encouraged to continue implementing at all levels of ownership. The enhanced pedestrian safety treatments, things as such. Trying other topics, but otherwise, normal project families that come to the table, we aren't, again, there's no DOT mandate on what, but preservation is still not a local mandate any longer, so.
We may still, as Greg alluded to, offer this solicitation without sort of parameters or restrictions, if you will, because it'll help us to understand what the local need is. I know I've been meeting with elected officials, and if I haven't come to your community yet, I will be reaching out soon to come and have that conversation, because that feeds into our long-range plan. But we've said this multiple times now at this table. There's a lot of backlog of the local projects. they're not moving forward as quickly as we all would like, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It is gonna limit what we can do in the tip update, and I'm not, I can't sugarcoat that. There's not gonna be a lot of capacity for new things. But we're gonna do the best we can to, once we see what's available, to try to program as, efficiently and consistently with the long range plan as we can. But, inflation has really harmed our ability to fund a wider range of projects, even though we had more federal funds from the most recent legislation. And limited contractors to do the work, limited consultants to design the projects, limited staff at the local level to implement the projects have all really hurt project delivery, to say the least.
And I can't encourage enough to get your projects to construction as fast as possible. Even if your project's sitting in an out year on the STIP and you have better progress on it, then please bring it forward. Don't look at the STIP as like, that has to be the schedule. Bring it forward. We want to obligate as much as we can on local projects, so, really, but whatever we can do to deliver local projects as fast as possible. Because the longer they linger, the longer they inflate, and it's so.
Yeah, so we're looking for,
Action on the tip solicitation materials. I'll call it.
to send it on to the policy.
Correct.
If I get that motion,
I'll make the motion.
thank you, Mark, we have a second.
Rec and share.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Jacob, Andrew, in motion, plan vision statement, just.
Yeah, so this is, we mentioned this at the last meeting, and we've been working on it over this last couple of weeks since we last met, so I just wanted to kind of give you a brief update of where we are and read through the vision statement, that was, developed. So, we continue to do a lot of public input. We have over 150 survey responses to date. The survey remains open till the end of August. We've got a bunch of events that we either have been to or are planning to go to this month. If there's other events in your community, let us know. We'll see if we have staff resources to attend. And thank you all for sharing the opportunity to fill out the survey via your social media. I've seen a lot of action and retweets and reshares through that. And we're still having these elected official meetings. What we'll be working on this fall is the needs assessment, preparing that list of quote illustrative projects, so the big dollar ones like a 787 scale or a replacement of a big bridge like 378. That we don't have the local resources to fund, so we're working on that. We're in the process right now of collecting video and photos for a regional library. It will be really helpful. Our next task force meeting is in September, but this is the draft vision statement that I think we're settling on. It will remain draft. We're gonna share it with the policy board, ask for their endorsement to release it for public review as draft. We do expect it to be refined as the process moves along. But I'll just read the statement as we have it constructed now. So by 2050, we will strive to maintain a clean transportation system that provides safe, equitable, resilient, and reliable options for the movement of people and goods. The capital region will thrive with a seamless multimodal network that is community focused, connecting all people to economic opportunity while supporting a sustainable growth and livable communities. Transportation investments will address inequities, improve system performance, adapt to technological advancements, and protect the environment for future generations. So I feel like that covers the range of issues that everybody has raised. I think it's a great start, it'll be interesting to see how, if and how that gets refined. And we're looking just for your endorsement for the policy board to then be able to release this for public review.
Any comments? Andrew, you make a motion to send the statement on to Public review,
Andrew and Greg.
further discussion, and all those in favor, aye? Anyone opposed, abstain? The draft goes forward.
Thank you.
Discussion items, Bridge New York program listed, says. Jacob.
Yeah,
Speak to that. We've got a letter here that's gonna look a lot like a TIP amendment letter. Essentially, what we want to show here is all of the Bridge New York projects that have just been, I guess, added essentially. We approved them back in March through our process. So technically, we don't need to approve them again. But we were waiting for the official kind of press release from the state to officially make these public and add them to the TIP. So if you've been awarded a Bridge New York project, they're going to be added to the TIP very shortly in the next couple of days or so. I'll probably shoot everyone an email out that received one once they've been added to the TIP, just to let everyone know, hey, they're there. And you can get started on them as soon as possible, because we have been kind of waiting, even though, again, right, like we approved them through our process, but they've kind of been in no man's land for the past couple months. So Bridge New York projects are officially going on the TIP. So we wanted to make note of that.
I did just want to state for the record, these are our replacements for the sponsors involved. We have shared this with the Native Nations. Water bodies are very important to the Native Nations, so if you're gonna be doing any land disturbance, it's very important that coordination with the Native Nations, at least inform them of what's going on, be undertaken as part of these. So they do have this list of projects. I do have a meeting with one of the nations next week to talk further about this. And if there's any specific concerns, I'll make sure that the sponsor is just made aware of the concerns. It was the Mohican Stockbridge Muncie group that I'll be meeting with.
Thank you, Sandy, Jacob. Summary of 22-27 TIP administrative modifications, Jacob again.
So this month, we only have 2 admin mods since the July meeting. The first one was a addition of purely state money to the Livingston Avenue Bridge project. So before we made this amendment to add federal money, they had increased the construction costs using state money. And then the second was just kind of a shuffling around of funding on a Rensselaer County Bridge New York project. Move the schedule around and move some funding between phases. No additional costs.
Any questions from Jacob? The local delivery update?
So, yeah, local delivery, no real project specific updates from me, but this afternoon, we're gonna be meeting to talk about our existing project confirmations for the TIP update. I think we talked a little bit about it at the last meeting. Essentially, we're going to be, in the next week or so, I'm gonna be sending out emails to everyone with an existing TIP project. We are going to be asking for updated costs or schedules, if you're aware of them at this point. And really what we're gonna be looking to do is make sure that all of our existing TIP projects are in the right place and have the right costs accounted for going into our updates, so we have that kind of on the books before we start programming new money. So just keep an eye out for that and please get back to us with that information as soon as possible, because that will play a factor into how we go about our TIP update.
Thank you, Jacob. NISDOT project delivery. Passing around.
I'm passing on this, performance goals and parlays very well into this conversation in the next few weeks to discuss schedules. This is the annual STIP performance discussion, the old amended and unamended, it's there. In short, if anything's in the current fiscal year that's about to end, that isn't gonna see construction obligation, we need to move it out of the federal fiscal year before the end of September. And then in this handout, we took a look at a very high level data set. That we keep internally. Now, I will caution that. The suggestions from us are based on, we keep very conservative dates so that. There's fluff built in our in-house data set to avoid commitments. But if the projects are actually moving forward, definitely please keep them in the year they're in and get them obligated. It's like moral of the story. And then the second page is 2025 performance reviews. Again, there's a lot of, it looks like we're suggesting to move almost everything out. That's again, based on a very conservative data set. I'm hoping that the feedback is a lot of these are much further along and will get the construction obligation next state fiscal year, or federal fiscal year. So just look at this, work with us and Jacob to keep it in next year or move it out if you actually have risk. Again, we can encourage very strongly to keep the progress going and get it obligated, but if you do have risk, please do move it out.
Can you just speak a little bit more about how this impacts the dollar side of it?
We want to obligate as much federal aid in a given year as possible. As across the state, we're all seeing similar issues on delivery. So the more we can deliver, the better for the obligation of all federal funds in New York State. We are historically good at obligating, but with things piling up in the end of the tip, it's causing concern that we may not actually continue that trend of obligating everything. And then some. So again, encouragement of go as fast as you can to deliver is the message. We want to obligate as much as possible, so. And clear the backlog of local projects because there are many more local projects active than we've seen in a long time, and it's a lot. There's a lot out there between Bridge New York, CAP-CMAC, and CRP, and then the local program here. There's a very long list of projects that are active, some phase of construction, some phase.
So I guess what I was trying to get at, when you see something that says move to 2026, does that mean, just for the record, does the money go with the project?
Yeah.
Or is it coming out of the new tip? That's what I was trying to get at.
The money goes with the project, but we prefer to obligate it sooner. I prefer not move these out to 26. This is just an initial data look. And if we do move too much out and overall don't obligate, there is some point, if you don't obligate, at some point, money does go back into the federal coffers or redistributed out of New York. We really don't want, right? So keeping them in is the most preferred. But if they move out, the money goes with it. Yeah.
Thank you. I did just receive this morning, so for those listening virtually, I know that we have a lot of consultants. We'll post this on the website so that it can be viewed by everybody, and we'll make sure that the sponsors see it.
My apologies, getting this done. Hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
So yeah, just as the conversations go on, just keep an honest schedule on the STIP and the performance will work out.
Thank you, Greg. Status of regional transportation planning initiatives. You, Sandy?
Yeah, so just wanted to report that we are very, very close to finishing our Route 4 corridor study in East Greenbush, and we anticipate that being a presentation at our next planning committee meeting in October, as that one wraps up. We're about to start projects in Niskuna. And we're waiting on a memorandum of understanding from Saratoga County in order for us to start work on the Town of Half Moon, Town of Clifton Park project. I'll just remind you, we are approaching the fall solicitation for new planning studies. We'll be bringing that to you guys in October for review, and hopefully some of the work on our long range plan and some other things that have come up, might inform. How much we're gonna be able to have available for. Whether it's linkage studies, technical assistance, or broader regional planning work, so expect that in the fall. And we're still, the technical assistance program is still open. I know we have one, possibly two that we're working on, putting together right now, but if anyone does need technical assistance, that can be anything from, hey, I need a traffic count on our roadway, all the way up to, we want some help facilitating a meeting to, you know, there's a lot of things we can do, very low cost or free for communities, so if you need any little help, feel free to reach out to me or Mark at CRPC. That's it.
Thank you, Sandy. Regional and local planning updates. Back to you, is anything additional?
It is on your agenda, but I did just want to point out that our regional, Capital Region Vision Zero Safety Action Plan has a series of public meetings scheduled in the month of August. On the agenda, I'll just let you know, the first one, I believe, they should have put the location, so I apologize for that. August 14th is Saratoga. Looking at Carrie as the project manager. No, well, it'll be, we'll clarify this on the website, but there's 3 in-person meetings and 1 virtual meeting. The virtual meeting is scheduled for August 20th. The 3 locations are Saratoga, Albany, and Waterville Senior Center. So I apologize, that information's not on the agenda. But we encourage you to come and participate. The 3 in-person meetings will be open house format. So what we're really seeking is community input on issues of safety concerns. We have a live survey still, as well as the online map. So that if folks want to contribute ideas who can't attend meetings, you can drop a pin on a map and tell us what your safety concern is. If you have an idea for fixing it, whatever it might be. So we're really gonna be out there in the community this month of August to gather your input.
CDRPC, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So CDRPC released our new population projections based on the 2020 decennial census. We did this year's analysis in partnership with Cornell's program on applied demographics. That's available on our website. We also released a housing affordability study, taking a look at median household income versus average rents and or mortgage expenses in the region. Our annual in-person workshop is going to be held on October 18th at Hudson Valley Community College. We'll have an outstanding list of sessions, October 18th, effective Friday. Easy way to get into your weekend. We will be releasing shortly an analysis of in-migration and out-migration in the region. And we continue to pursue work related to our EPA carbon pollution reduction grant. We are currently leading up the Capital Region Climate Action Collaborative, and we're working to develop the comprehensive climate action plan for the region. Building on the work that was completed back in March when we adopted our priority climate action plan. The comprehensive action plan will include recommendations in a variety of sectors, including transportation. So we're working very closely with some staff here to make sure that we're in lockstep with any updates to their priorities for climate action and their transportation plan, and that they will marry well with our climate action plan. The plan will also include a fully updated greenhouse gas inventory for the region, greenhouse gas emission projection, greenhouse gas reduction targets, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be a really good resource for the region and really set some, I think, actionable goals across sectors so we can all come together to reduce our collective carbon footprint. That's all I have.
Mark.
I just wanted to point out, I am sharing on screen the locations and dates for the various public events related to the Vision Zero plan.
CDTA, do we have anybody?
I'll run a business for CDT.
Okay. Nice dot. Greg, do you wanna talk some more?
Very brief, with Chad Corbett's move from Schenectady to Albany County is already the acting Schenectady County resident engineer is now Tom Cashdollar, so. Musical chairs of our residencies continues. That's it.
Thank you, Greg. Thruway Authority, anybody?
No representatives today.
Albany County Airport, Connor is here.
Yes, thank you. As you all know, we were working through finalizing our airport master plan update. We did come with a presentation, consultant CHA previously to a meeting to present the findings. We've been working for the past 6 months with both New York State DOT and FAA to finalize that. We did get the approvals last month. And we're gonna hopefully bring that to our board on Monday for formal adoption. So thankful to have that. All the materials are available online, still on the website. The website will be there indefinitely. www.alb-master-plan.com has the full report, all the ALP sheets that are more the technical side, but it has everything that still has even public comment. So that will continue as long as possible. Yeah, so if you have any questions, please reach out to me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Albany Port is great.
So I did want to introduce our new representatives. John and Megan will be representing the port here on the planning committee moving forward. Just so you guys know, because this is your first meeting, we do a little roundtable just to kind of update folks on things happening at the port. If there's anything you'd like to share today, no pressure.
We've got a couple things going on at the port. Hi, I'm Megan Neely, I'm the Chief Commerce Officer. One thing we want to know, because we do get inquiries about it, is we are doing the Port Industry Day. We haven't done that for a couple of years, so we're excited to say that that will be in September. It is International Maritime Week that we're doing it.
It's a day, it's around that day.
And so like the Port of New York and New Jersey does theirs that week, not the same day. But ours will be September 19th, starting in the morning. Save the dates have started to go out. They'll go out a little bit more formally this week and next week, and then we'll do invitation with some more on the agenda. In terms of the projects, we continue to work on the expansion site with the heavy lift bridge is well underway. It should be complete this fall, which is very exciting to us. And the pad ready at the expansion site is nearing completion. We are thankful to be starting a rail project at the maritime the existing maritime operation with thanks to the PFRAP program at New York State DOT, so we're busy.
Thank you.
Okay, upcoming meetings, so please take note. Sandy went over the Vision Zero plan meetings. So you have a regional operations and safety advisory, August 15th, freight advisory, August 21. Equity Advisory Board, our committee, is August 22nd, and the Policy Board is September 5th. Planning Committee is, I know we meeting again.
We would be meeting October, is meeting the second calendar, October 2nd.
Okay, anything else and interesting anybody wants to add?
In February coming up, save the date, 6 months to the awesomely 2025 Saratoga County Planning and Zoning Conference, which quite a few of you have attended before. Hopefully it's not the same date as the planning committee meeting here for CRTC, so save the date on your calendar. And if anyone has any planning session proposals, feel free to reach out to me and we'd love to get you on our agenda. Thank you.
February what?
Fifth. Yeah, so I do, thinking ahead to our 2025 calendar for this group, because New Year's happens to be the first Wednesday in January. Obviously, we're gonna push that out a week to accommodate the Saratoga County Planning and Zoning Conference. We're gonna move the February meeting to the week prior. And because we're doing the tip update, if we need a third meeting in early February, that'll give us 3 opportunities to work through the tip. And then the policy board would be in March. So that's our tentative schedule for 2025. We hope to may even try to pull that together so that we can share it with you guys at the next meeting.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn, can I get one of those? 11:03. I'll second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, abstained. Thank you.
Thank you.